Good afternoon, everybody. This is Will Phillips with AARP Minnesota. We are coming to you today with a really important issue related to particularly older workers and the COVID-19 pandemic. As we all know, the pandemic has left many in Minnesota and across the country facing financial hardships because they've lost their jobs. Hundreds of thousands of workers have been laid off. They've applied for unemployment insurance benefits rather, since the pandemic began. But unfortunately, here in Minnesota, we're the only state in the country that discriminates against unemployment insurance applicants by age. And today we're going to be hearing directly from one of those older workers who is experiencing this discrimination and the denial of these benefits. That person is on the screen here with me today, coming to you from Rochester, Minnesota. Roger Cadogan. We're going to hear about Roger's experience. We're going to hear about the law and why it's an unfair law that needs to be repealed. And we're also going to make sure that we're letting you know how you can make a difference in terms of helping to repeal this law. We're in the waning days of the Minnesota State Legislature, and we're going to be asking each of you to take a minute, to send an email, to make a phone call, to help us repeal this unfair law that, again, really denies benefits to older workers who've been laid off and who also happen to be either applying for or receiving Social Security benefits. We'll get into the details here in a minute. So again, for those of you just joining, my name is Will Phillips. We're going to be talking about a law that, again, discriminates against older workers who've been laid off and who need to be collecting unemployment insurance benefits as a way to really make ends meet. The Senate proposal that is being considered right now, again, in the waning days of the Minnesota State Legislature, only goes halfway. It repeals the law, but because of a deficit that's being faced in our unemployment trust fund, they're delaying the actual benefits that will be provided to people for several years. And so for people who are facing tough times financially right now, this is really unacceptable because it, in effect, provides no relief at all. And so Roger Cadogan, again, from Rochester, is here with us. Roger, thanks for being with us today, first of all.
Delighted to be here.
We appreciate it. I'm in Minneapolis, you're in Rochester. We've got a couple parts of the state here covered anyway. But I want to get right into your situation, Roger. Prior to the pandemic, you were working in a part-time position and receiving Social Security. So can you tell us about what changed in the last year due to the pandemic for you?
Well, what occurred was I was working as a retail merchandiser inside of some local retail stores. And as this pandemic progressed, and it became obvious that I was in the high-risk category. So I was over 65, I was a male, and I had an underlying medical condition, all of which put me into that high-risk category. The company that I worked for at that time, and this would have been in probably mid-April of last year, did come out and say, if you are one of those people that feel that they are at risk, we will allow you to resign your position and still collect unemployment benefits, which I thought it was a wonderful thing for this company to do.
Yep.
And since I fit into that category, I went ahead and resigned my position and immediately applied for unemployment benefits. Approximately 3 weeks later, I received a letter from the state of Minnesota stating that once we took into account the amount of money that you're receiving from Social Security, your benefit amount will be zero. And I was absolutely stunned. I had never heard of this rule or policy that the state of Minnesota has, and started looking into it and discovered, sure enough, because of the offset of Social Security against unemployment benefits, I received no benefits.
Yeah. If you would have known If you would have known
Right.
that
Had I known
before
that, right.
leaving your job, you probably would have taken a different course of action, right?
Absolutely, I
Yeah.
would have.
Yeah. But who knows? Who knows these things when you're right in the thick of it, and obviously right in the thick of a pandemic when you've got, as you suggested, kind of those three things that made you incredibly high risk. You're balancing financial security, but also your health and your safety
Correct.
at those points. And so it's an untenable situation, and obviously has been for a lot of Minnesotans. But then to learn that Minnesota is the only state in the country that has this offset, and then to obviously face what came next, because the reality is your employer had been paying in to unemployment for you.
Right.
The reality is also that Social Security, you're not getting rich off that. The typical benefit
Certainly
in the
not.
state of Minnesota is about what, $1,400 a month or so, give or take. And it was never intended, of course, to be the sole source of income in retirement. It was intended to be really, a baseline, a safety net for people. And we know that more and more these days, people are continuing to work and receive Social Security in addition to whatever private savings folks hopefully have been able to have out there. So it clearly has put you in a tough place.
Right. Absolutely, it has, and that's again one of the frustrating aspects of this.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who are on Social Security that is their only income.
That's right.
While we would love to be able to see everybody have enough money beyond Social Security when they retire, the fact is that sometimes life gets in the way. And money that you have set aside for retirement has to be used for other emergencies.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people just like myself that got to retirement, and Social Security is the only source that I have available.
Yeah.
And so, yes, there are many of us who take on additional work even after retirement to make ends meet.
Yeah.
And it's just frustrating that this kind of thing happens.
Yeah, frustrating is probably a measured term at this point for you.
It is.
And for a lot of folks out there. And let's just kind of reverse a little bit and let me summarize to a degree kind of what's happening. Okay.
Sure.
The pandemic has resulted in job loss for thousands and thousands and thousands of people across the country. Here in Minnesota, of course, for older workers, it has been significantly challenging because just like you, there are lots and lots of people out there who had either applied for or were receiving Social Security. They lose their jobs. They have a situation like you where they are at risk. So they leave jobs, apply for unemployment, and then they're finding out I'm not eligible because this offset is significantly reducing the benefit or eliminating it altogether. And so AARP, we started hearing about this. We started hearing from people like you calling us saying, hey, this is unfair. It's happening to me. And so we've been working along with you and other folks across the state to get this unfair law repealed. I guess if you're thinking about this as a two-step, we've made one step. We've gotten widespread agreement from the Senate and the House that this is an unfair law that needs to be repealed. The problem at this point is that the Senate version, and this is in the Senate Omnibus Jobs Bill, Senate File 1098, doesn't take the second step. It repeals the law, but delays the implementation until sometime down the road when the trust fund is sufficiently flush to be able to meet the need. And that may be fine in ordinary days, but in the midst of a pandemic, these are not ordinary days. And so I believe what we're suggesting is that these aren't ordinary days. So let's take extraordinary measures and fund the repeal now so that the people who are suffering, the people who are having to make really difficult sacrifices and trade-offs can get the benefits that their employers have paid in that should be there for them today. And Roger, you're a prime example. I like talking to you, but of course not in this circumstance, but you're having to make some of those trade-offs. What's going on in your daily life that as a result of this unfair law?
Well, probably the first thing that I started doing was cutting back on some of the medication that I had.
Yeah.
Rather than taking 2 a day, I went down to 1 a day. So that allowed me to stretch that out, without hopefully sacrificing my health too much. The other aspects is you just really have to watch what you're spending. And so things that you might want to be able to do, to enjoy your life a little bit more, you just don't do.
Yeah.
And, those are just some of the things
Yeah.
that we have to keep an eye out on.
Absolutely. And we could do a whole nother conversation on the high cost of prescription drugs. Of course,
Yeah.
we won't go there today, but that's a whole nother issue. But the reality is that people are making trade-offs that really are, kind of unacceptable when you think about it. And the legislature has the ability to provide relief to people today. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Things are getting better. We've got hope on the horizon, vaccinations and all the rest. That's great. But for people who have lost their jobs, we know in particular for older workers, it's going to be more difficult to recover. Ageism still exists.
It certainly does.
Right? Difficulties getting back into the job market when you're in your 60s are more prevalent, more pronounced than they were if you were in your 40s or 30s or whatever the case might be. So we've got to provide the relief today. And again, our message is that we need you, the people out there, hopefully listening and watching, to contact your state senator, to let them know that we appreciate their acknowledgement, right? That this law that's on the books in Minnesota, the only state in the country, we appreciate their acknowledgement in the jobs bill, Senate File 1098, that the law is unfair. First step.
Right.
But they've got to take the second step, and they've got to make sure that they are providing the funding or making the law effective as quickly as possible, so that people like you and countless others out there who are dealing with this can have the relief that they need now. And I think that's what we need folks to say, right, Roger? If you were on the phone with your senator, would you say it any other way, or would you add a couple things?
So, well, yeah, there wouldn't be much more that I would add other than, explain to me why this can't be changed now.
Yeah.
I mean, it shouldn't have to wait. This law shouldn't have been in place to begin with. And based on what I know of the background and why it was put into place, clearly the folks that put this into place didn't even think about the fact that there are many seniors who are working jobs because they have to make ends meet.
That's right.
And right, the fact that we're the only state that does this should be a clear message to those people that it needs to be changed.
That's right. Yeah. You weren't working to, allow you to play an extra 18 every week. Right?
That is correct.
Right. Or, whatever, example you want to provide. The folks who are working and collecting Social Security, many of whom are doing so to make ends meet.
To make ends meet. Correct.
To pay the bills, to keep from having to split medications or take less and put your health and safety on the line. That's what we're talking about. You're the kind of person we're talking about. There are countless others out there who are in the same situation that we need to make some changes here. And so again, take a few minutes. The link is right there on your screen. Contact your state senator. We need to take action to improve the financial security of all Minnesota workers who find themselves out of work. And this ageist discriminatory law is not acceptable in Minnesota, and we need to make that change. So we want to thank everybody for joining us today and encourage you once again to contact your state senator. Roger Kadokin in Rochester, I want to thank you. Not everybody is willing to share their story as a way to create the change that we need to create that will help lots and lots and lots of other people. So thank you for joining us today. We appreciate that.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Okay. Well, very good. Well, with that, I'm Will Phillips with AARP Minnesota. I'm joined today by Roger Cadogan, citizen extraordinaire from Rochester, Minnesota. We thank all of you for watching today. Encourage you to contact your state senators, urge repeal of this legislation, and stay tuned for other things that AARP is working on in the future. Have a good afternoon.